I'm just gonna start talking to you. If that's okay.
Great. So I don't listen to you do my introduction.
No, I'm gonna do it behind the scenes and then edit it so you can't really change it afterwards. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay, so Ultan, if you had to put yourself in a 2-sentence bio, how would you describe yourself to my audience?
Okay, interesting. This is where, if we were on TV, I would take a drink here to kind of think about it. I think hot and sexy, young theatre maker from Donegal.
Very good.
Yeah, it's one line, isn't it? Didn't even do two.
That's one line. You didn't even do 2 lines. It's amazing. What a writer you are. You're very concise.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so aside from all the restrictions, can you maybe tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of what you do in theatre?
Yeah, so I basically predominantly am an actor and a writer, Richard. I'm from County Donegal, Killybegs, County Donegal. I bet that's an important part of my artistic output, is that I'm from Ireland's most northerly county. Also most disadvantaged county, which I think is quite interesting. When I think about Donegal, I think about that a lot. But yeah, so basically I write and act. I studied in Trinity College Dublin. I graduated 5 years ago, so I'm officially old. I certainly feel old. I've done a lot of my work with Lemon Soap Productions, which is a company I founded coming out of college. We've done, I think it's 8 or 9 productions now in the last 5 years, 4 or 5 years. So it's been really productive and a bit hell for leather, but it's been going really good. So.
Yeah, and could you maybe talk a bit more about Lemon Soap in terms of, is that a production company that you were involved in from the very beginning and held form? What was the process like for that?
Yeah, so when we were in college, we studied in Trinity College and we were part of DU Players, which I know you're a graduate of your old drama society as well. And what I really loved about that was the can-do attitude of it, that we all came together to just make work all the time. I think I did I wrote 11 plays when I was in college and put them on in our drama society. So I kind of left college feeling like, oh, I've got a bit of wind behind me, and I kind of understand audiences and understand when people are laughing at my writing in a way that I don't want them to laugh, which was a difficult lesson. So coming out of college, I said, well, there's a group of us that have been working together throughout our college years. Why don't we try and keep that going a little bit? So it was out of that Lemon Soap was born. And I was there at the very beginning, and there was 5 of us at the start. And then Julia, one of our co-founders, she left after our second show. She was like, this is too stressful. I can't keep making theatre.
Fair.
Yeah. So she has a wonderful corporate job. And every time she tells me about a promotion she's gotten, I shiver. Not in a bad way. I shiver because I would love that. I would love to be making, a livable wage. So, yeah, so that's been since 2021. So we started off, and I think it might be interesting about process, Richard, but I was in college during COVID. So in 2020, when the world shut down, and what was really important about that was I was chair of the Drama Society in Trinity at the time, and we were trying to find a way to keep things going and to bring everyone online, which I know you also suffered through those years. So a part of that was we started making soap operas online, and we would do them on the live on the Trinity radio. Once a week, we would do a live episode of a soap opera we'd written. And they were kind of crazy, but it really taught me about this way of making work that was radio drama and audio drama and as a viable path. So when Lemon Soap Productions was first started, it was 2021, late 2021. And our first piece was a radio drama called Marmalade Row. And we got a little bit of funding from Angry Non Theatre. And we were able to use that funding to hire actors I really admired. And from them, we kind of launched off from there, kind of doing a mixture of audio drama, radio drama, and then live productions as well.
Can you name drop some of those artists that you got to work with that you're delighted to work with?
Yeah, my hero was Marion O'Dwyer.
Yeah.
Who's an incredible actress. I love her, and I loved her in college. I saw her in a show called The Red Shoes in the Gate, which I saw twice, and I just adored it. And she was so funny, but so utterly not vain. She just didn't care. She would go do anything for the joke, and then just towards the end of the play, she started revealing that this character wasn't just this grotesquerie. She was also had a heart somewhere, and I just was so pulled over with her performance. At any time Marion O'Dwyer was on stage after that, I went to see her, and I've actually worked with her I think 4 times now since 2021. She's in my muse, but she's been in a lot of my work, so it's been really exciting. We just did a show recently called Ballybridgewater, which was again a soap opera inspired farce, and Marion was in it alongside Dervla Crotty, who's another hero of mine, and my friend Luke was in that show. And he texted me after one of the rehearsals and he was like, Ultan, like, you used to spend all your time in college talking about how much you diva worshipped Marion O'Dwyer and Dervla Crotty. And now here we are in a rehearsal room and they're in your piece and kind of interrogating it and challenging it and getting to collaborate. So in that sense, it's been a really exciting couple of years.
That's so funny because my last stage management job was working with Dervla Crotty and Marion O'Dwyer on The May
Oh,
with Decadent
incredible.
Theatre Company.
Yeah.
And I remember they're both amazing performers, and I just remember Marion's just warmth in like just the rehearsal room, and just Dervla's like just incredible power. Like she should just draw attention to her on stage. It's incredible. But it's just so funny how, you know, when you admire people and then you get to see them in the room, and then getting to see them perform your work that you're working on, that must have felt like a full circle moment as well.
Yeah, it's really exciting. And when you're making the work, you're kind of not thinking about that because you're just so stressed and you just want to
Yeah.
want to die or cry. So the fact that I was able to have that moment with Luke where he was like, isn't it crazy that like in 2017 you were just nonstop talking about these two actresses that you really admired? And yeah, it's kind of crazy to think I got to work with them last week and we did this piece. So it was wonderful. I think what's interesting about it for me, Richard, is that as an actor and a writer, it's the chance to be in rooms with heroes like that, people who have like 30, 40 years of craft and real experience, and see how they handle it. Like last week in rehearsals, Marion had a joke and the other actor in the scene moved, like actually walked across the stage on her joke. And after she finished the scene, she said, "Excuse me, never move on a joke." She's like, "That kills the laugh." She's like, "You stay there and you wait until they stop laughing." And I was like, "Oh, it's great." Like you just pick up all these little things about craft and process from these incredible actors. So it's a real privilege, I think.
Absolutely. And I think Ireland is so buzzing with those kind of like performers that we would have seen on stage and doing performances like I never seen David Crotty in the one of the Shakespeare shows at Druid, like, do you know what I mean? Like Druid Shakespeare. So like you just see them and then in a complete different light when they're in the rehearsal room with you.
Yeah.
And
the nuggets of gold.
Yeah. And they bring so much knowledge that you just didn't even know about.
I was gonna give you when I did this show, we did this radio drama with Dervla Crotty and Marion O'Dwyer as well, and Dervla had this big line. It was a terrible radio drama I wrote called Constantine, Richard. Like, it was really embarrassing. But Dervla and Marion were in it playing lesbians who lived in a lighthouse. I can't believe they said yes to it, and it kind of followed 60 years of their lives together. It was such trash. I can't believe I wrote it, and Dervla and Marion were in it, and during the recording session, Dervla had a line like their foster son died in it. Like, it was such a bad script. Like, I'm so embarrassed that it's out there in the public. But Dervla had a line about it, and the line was something like, "Oh, it's always just so silent." And in rehearsals and in the first couple of takes, she just kind of said the line, and then in one of the takes, she just screamed the line out of the blue at the top of her lungs, and everyone in the room kind of just jolted back. And afterwards, I was dropping her home in the car, and I said to everyone, "You screamed that line just glorious. It was such an unexpected moment." And she said, "Well, darling, you always have to give them a little surprise." And I just thought, yes, like such a great acting note, just to know, like, sometimes just surprise and see what works, just go there. Yeah, so I'm learning so much from these incredible actresses.
For sure. And I'm actually going to insert a clip from Constantine here now. I'm joking.
Please
I won't do that to you. I won't do that to you. Imagine. So you're talking there about like a show that you were saying they were a little bit embarrassed by. That must be part of the process for a writer, is to have these shows that maybe at the time you think are, you know, really working, and then like a couple of years later you listen back and you're like, "Oh no, I can't believe," or like read back your work and think, "Oh, I would change that." How do you balance that as a writer, that kind of...
Yeah. In some senses, Richard, I've tried to free myself from the shackles of it by saying that, like, I can look back at a piece of work and say that was the best possible thing I could have done at that time under the circumstances with which it was made. It still doesn't stop the shiver down the spine sometimes when you hear a line or you think about a line you thought ate up. But I do try and always remind myself of that, a bit of cognitive behavioral therapy of, you know, that was the best thing you could have done in 2021 and 2022. You learned from it, you grew from it as an artist, and you've moved on. And that's what I find really very exciting, is the idea that, you know, I touch wood, I might have another 60 years left of a career. And like, I can't wait to be 80. Like, I can't wait. I'll probably be really good then. I'll probably have learned enough by then that I'm like, I can stand there and be like, no, I did my best there. So I think about that continual evolution of the process and the practice of just giving yourself that grace of saying, yes, it's slightly embarrassing that you thought that Just Dance Rasputin routine would be a great way to end the play. But at the time, you did think it was good. And like, the audience responded in some ways to it. Some of them hated it, some of them liked it. Give yourself the grace of realizing that's the best you could have done and move on from it and learn from it, I think, is what I keep reminding myself.
Was there a Rasputin dance number at the end of one of your plays?
There was. It was a play called, it was originally meant to be called Rasputin. But the war in Ukraine broke out. So the theatre were like, I don't think we can have Putin in the title of this play. So it was changed. It was changed to be called It Is Good We Are Dreaming, which was done in 2022 in the new theatre, yeah.
Oh, in the new theatre, okay.
Yeah.
And if you could go back and change that last dance number, what would you change it to now?
Do you know what? I'm going to stick to my guns, Richard. I think I probably would have saved it as the Rasputin dance routine, because basically it was about these two half siblings, and their kind of core memory is that they did the Rasputin dance when they would see each other very seldomly when they were younger. And it's about their failure of their relationship and climate change and like Irish mythology. It was trying to do a lot. And, basically they refer to this idea as like when they danced together when they were younger was a moment of catharsis and kind of energy for them. So when things have gone really wrong in their relationship, when it's really dissolved across the course of this play, the brother decides he puts on Rasputin and be like, come on, let's do the dance. And they try and do it, but it fails for them. So I think dramatically it could have worked. I think I misstepped a lot in that play, but I think there's something dramatic about the idea. If I could write it now, it probably wouldn't be as mortifying.
Slight changes, but that's the whole learning process. It's a curve. Okay, so as a writer, could you maybe give my audience a bit of an understanding of like, how does it start?
Yeah. I think I'm quite character-led, Richard, and I think about that a lot. It's a character appears and a moment sometimes, and sometimes an image. So it's one of those three things that it pops into your head and you start to go, I want to follow that and take it to the nth degree. Sometimes it's a bit like a character's voice arrives and it's a bit, I'm not sure I believe in God, but it's a bit like something's come down from the clouds and given you this voice and you go, I have to follow that and just see where it leads. So quite often it's character based. Often it's like something you might have heard once or something that interested you years ago that comes back up or bubbles back up. I'm quite interested now that I've been at this, like I've been writing for 10 years since I was 18, is the sense that the plays that you thought you were going to write at 18 or 19, you're still kind of writing them at 28, except they're just way better. They're not as mortifying. So like, the idea kind of consistently comes back. Like I just finished a draft of a play called See Swallow Me, which originally was a play called Salt that I wrote when I was 19. And it was when I had it was accepted into the New Theatre, New Writing Week. So it was my first kind of professional adventure as a writer when I was 19. And like the play, it was clearly written by a 19-year-old. But the ideas in it have come back 9 years later and are being like reused, or the characters are being redone in this new play. I think that's what's interesting to me about, the consistency of the idea that the thread that you follow. I don't know if I'll still be rewriting those characters when I'm 80, but maybe I will be, and then nobody will want to see them because it's just reuse, recycle. But
was there nostalgia when you picked up Salt again to kind of rehash it out?
I think there was always a core idea that worked. Like I think at 19, I think that there was a core truth to the play that was powerful, I think, and people responded to it in that reading, back in 2017 or 2018. So coming back to that core truth and picking up that emotional thread again 9 years later and trying to put it through a play that's better and that has more craft and skill behind it was really interesting. It's a difficult play about the dissolution of an Irish family across this weekend in their town with the town floods. So I've been redrafting it recently thinking this is really topical, as half of Ireland floods all the time. So yeah, so it's kind of, it's I suppose what's interesting is picking up that emotional truth again and looking at it 9 years later from a 28-year-old's perspective, and I've matured, I hope. But the emotional truth is still the same. So about how you look at it through a different lens and how it's refracted differently now. The play is much better now than it was in its, incarnation in 2017. I hope.
And well, we should find out, won't we? Is there
hopefully someday?
And when you've written your script and you want to then bring it to fruition. What is that step from, going from the kind of the playwriting part to the actual, now it's going to be produced? What does that look like?
I think it's a bit different for me at the moment because all of my work, my playwriting has been produced through Lemon Soap Productions. And something like See Swallow Me is a 7-hander family drama in the grand lineage of Tennessee Williams and Eugene O'Neill. And that's not a Lemon Soap production. Lemon Soap is kind of gay and frothy and poppy. So you're like, well, okay, I'm not going to do that with Lemon Soap. So that's a bit of a different process where you're trying to send it out to the theatres and try and get somebody to love you enough to want to put it on one day. So far, not lucky, Richard. I shall keep trying it. We are recording this on Valentine's Day, so maybe I'll be lucky. But
yeah, maybe if there's anyone who's in like theatre in Ireland is interested in that storyline, I think it sounds great. And wants to a Valentine's Day gift to Ultan. Let him know.
Please, nobody else is getting me a gift. Uh-oh. Oh God, I'm making myself look sad and pathetic. You're going to cut this bit, right?
No, I'm going to keep it in.
Insert clip.
Yeah.
But so that's very different. Like if a piece comes through Lemon Soap, it's interesting within your oeuvre. I'm probably not even pronouncing that right, am I? Your oeuvre. Things pop out and you go, yeah, that's a Lemon Soap show, and I could put that on through Lemon Soap, and it could be a 2-hander or 3-hander or 4-hander, and it fits what we're going for with that company. But then there's other things you're like, this 3-act play about intergenerational trauma in a Donegal family isn't going to be a Lemon Soap show someday. But that's what's interesting to me, is about having multi-strands to your writing as well. Somebody told me that we're not very good at that here in Ireland, that we kind of try to box writers off and have them in their lane. Whereas, I want to have my 10-person soap opera farce alongside my weird little post-apocalyptic play about mice. And I'd love to have both those things happening at once.
Yeah, imagine if you had one on in, like, I don't know, down in the new theatre, and then one on the Project Arts at the same time. Everyone would be like, what is, like,
hell yeah,
what is happening?
Yeah, we did have last year, we were doing the Lesbian Review of World History, which was a musical myself and HK Nahirdon did in Smock Alley. And that was on, and then the poster was up for Boyfriends outside Smock Alley as well at the same time. So we were walking in past 2 Lemon Soap shows that were going to be done within 2 months of each other. And you were thinking, like, this is cool. I'm enjoying it.
It's really cool.
Yeah.
And I just love your titles of your plays are bonkers. Like, they are very interesting.
Yeah, you say interesting in a derogative manner there, Richard.
Not at all. No, well, it has to be eye-catching for the audience to kind of go in and get tickets as well. But you mentioned one play that I want to talk about a go bit more, and that's Boyfriends. So that was a touring production. Could you maybe give me some information around, like, how did that show come about?
How did that happen? Yeah, I think I wrote that show originally in 2023, I think. Maybe early 2023. And I basically wanted to write about situationships. It was something I found really, I hadn't read much about it then. I thought it was quite interesting. I wanted to write specifically about a gay situationship. And I wanted to write about bodies, and I wanted to write about aesthetics and have that be a part of it. So I wrote this draft, I think within a week, of this terrible romantic comedy called, I think at the time it was called Marshmallow, because the dog in the play was called Marshmallow. That title changed quickly. So it came about because of that, and it was a simple play that was all set in a bedroom and just followed the course of this situationship from beginning to end, from the first time these two fellas met each other to the last time they saw each other. And we were kind of shopping that about. We did a development of it in 2023. And we kind of decided on a whim we would send in for a project award from the Arts Council, the Strand 3 Project Award. And we, on a whim, were like, why don't we just see if Project Arts Centre would be willing to put this on someday? So we emailed Project Arts Centre, and suddenly everything came together, and we shot in the Strand 3 Project Award, like, in no expectation of getting it, Richard, at all. Like, it seemed like so pie in the sky. And then we received the funding for it, and people were quite shocked that we got the funding. People were like, you're too young people, like, you shouldn't be getting these project awards. But we were really lucky, I think. And I can kind of talk about why I think we were lucky about that later on, if that's of interest to you. But so we knew then we were doing this show, which had been retitled to Boyfriends, and I did not like the script at all, Richard. I thought the script sucked. I thought it was so pedestrian. So in late 2023, I started thinking, how could this be less embarrassing? And I started thinking about situationships, and I was really interested that the idea of a situationship is that anything is possible. So why couldn't anything be possible within the world of this play? So that became that the form of the play changed every scene. So every new scene was a different form. So it became like, you followed these two fellas, still from the beginning of their relationship to maybe the last time they saw each other. The play ended on an unknown, so you never really found out what happened between them, which drove some audience members nuts. People would stop you in the street and like kill air, being like, what happens? But so every second, like it became a sitcom. A scene was set in a sitcom, a scene was set in a rom-com, a scene was set in a period drama. One of them became a Samuel Beckett play. At one point they were uploaded into a computer and they spoke to each other through code. So the play, every second scene changed form, and it became, I think, a much more robust piece of work. So that's what we actually put on then in 2024 was Boyfriends in the Project Arts Centre. We ran it for 2 weeks in project and did a week in On Green On Theatre, and the play kind of shot off in a way, or it found its audience really well, and we had queues for tickets, queues for return tickets at some points, and like it was really feral, Richard, but it just proved that like people want gays, people want, you know, gay rom-coms, and I think the rom-com form is so appealing to people. The will they won't they, people were really invested in that, and it was about bodies and grief and aesthetics and addiction, but also it was really frothy, so you could be laughing at it about the ridiculousness of them. You know, suddenly we were in period drama, we were in Bridgerton, and we were dressed like that, and we were doing a dance routine to like Casual by Chapel Roan. It's mortifying to look back on. But yet then the next scene was about grief or about addiction, so you kind of had this double whammy thing happened of people were really, really laughing, and then a switch would happen in the play and you'd start to hear people crying, and it kind of took off in that regard. I think people left being like, God, that was a good night out. I got to do everything I wanted to do that night. So yeah, and then after project, we put in a touring application, and then we toured to 8 venues around Ireland in late 2025 for 6 weeks. So, and the play again found its audience, and we found ourselves sitting in a pub in Roscommon with the local Pride committee. After they all came to see the show, we were doing a pub quiz in a pub in Roscommon, and we were all talking about being gay, and having these people respond to the play all over Ireland was a real treat, I have to say. I feel a bit spoilt that I got to have that.
I think that message of, you know, kind of the gay relationship is still as important as it was when we look at marriage equality. So like the themes are really important in Boyfriends and in most of the productions, if not all the productions you do at Lemon Soapbox. Why do you feel that's an important story to tell still?
Well, sometimes I don't even think about it in terms of like this is an important story to tell. I think about what's the story I want to tell, and I want to write queer characters. I want to have LGBT characters in the work, and I want that to be a part of it. And it has been a part of every single one we've done. I think we're up to 9 now, and there has been gays in all of them because they're made by gay people. There's going to be gays in them. And I think what was really interesting, well, one, I think it's important, Richard, because I think art humanizes. I hate the word art sometimes, but I'm going to use it. But I think it does humanize. And I think when we did something like Boyfriends, there was a lot of middle-aged women coming up to us after the show being like, oh my God, that could have been me and my husband. And they were kind of surprised by how much they had responded to the story of two, you know, gay men and their toxic situationship. And I was thinking, well, yeah, because for them, almost as if some humanization had happened of queerness or something, where they were able to relate to it. And we're like, God, I'm kind of surprised that like I felt like that could have been me and my husband. And that happened as a lot. We got that a lot across the tour and across the original run of Boyfriends. And I thought it was just really interesting that, you know, if you treat characters with empathy and with difficulty, and you present difficult characters, you know, they transcend sexuality. Or I did an interview for Boyfriends once with a local radio station, and the guy was like, does the play cross boundaries? And I said, what do you mean? He goes, does it cross borders? And I was like, I knew exactly what he meant, but I said, can you elaborate on that? And he's like, you know, do straight people want to watch stuff like this? And I was like, I think they actually do, and I think it's important that they do as well, and that they get to come and see it and enjoy it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think even now with certain rom-coms like Heated Rivalry and all those kind of things, now it becomes more at the forefront, but the humanizing aspect is really important in society, especially the world that we live at the moment.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting too. Like, I mean, a lady in Donegal, when we did the tour in October, she came up to me and she was like, my grandmother was there that night. My grandmother loves Boyfriends, even though like there's a lot of sex in Boyfriends, there's a lot of talk about different things. My grandmother loved it, and this woman came to me and said, did you let your grandmother watch that? did you seriously, do you think like that's something like a woman of her age should be watching? And I was like, she was kiki in the front row. She was having a great time. And it's like, we do each other such a disservice to say that, this isn't, or it's siloed and it's not for us and it's for someone else. Actually, no, like, I think if your work embraces the humanity of the character and treats that character with complexity and integrity, I think it does transcend. And I think it's also specificity, Richard, if I can be so boring to talk about that. We always talk about what's universal in the work, and I actually hate that. And I hate likable and I hate universal. I hate when those two words are used with regards to the work. I think it's specificity, its unlikability is actually what's more interesting to us as audiences. Boyfriends was hyper specific to the experience of being a 27-year-old gay man on dating apps and meeting another fellow in a club and taking him back. And it was hyper specific to their sex, to the way they interacted with each other, to the way they spoke to each other. But like, you had women in their 50s or 60s coming up to you afterwards to talk about their own experiences of their own bodies, or how they related to their fatness, or how, and so it transcended through its specificity. And I think you cannot get universal work by trying to be universal. I think you just destroy your piece. And I think we're in this great scourge of likability as well, of everyone saying, well, she's just not likable. Shut the hell up. I don't care. I think everyone's likable in some way. And I think you do the audience a disservice if you don't let a character embrace all of its complexities and its difficulties. I was really interested in that in Boyfriends. Both those men do horrible things to each other, but yet you still have people coming up to you afterwards in the foyer arguing with you about, like, you were still a good person or not, or the other guy was the right one and you were the wrong one. And I think just letting it be that difficult was what allowed an audience to engage with it in some way.
And do you feel sometimes that theatre at the moment is kind of I don't know if you feel this way, but we feel like we're kind of spoon feeding audiences to feel a certain way about different characters rather than letting the audience kind of decide for themselves. I think humans are so complex that you can't really just put people into boxes and be like, well, okay, this person is a good person and that's why you should like this person in your play. That becomes almost unrealistic then compared to what the realistic look is.
I completely agree, Richard. And I also think we're in this great scourge of revivals and plays from the 70s, 40s, 1800s, 1500s being done instead of work that engages with modernity in a complex manner. So when Boyfriends was on 2024, people were really surprised that it took off. And I actually thought about it and I was like, I don't think there had been a play. We were 6-7 months into the year when Boyfriends was on 2024. There hadn't been a play on a major stage in Dublin that was written and set in 2024 by that time in the year. I think Fringe Festival came along a couple of months later and that was a bit more, current. But I was like, people want to go and see work that engages with the world they're living in outside it. And I think because we're just so afraid of new writing and we're so afraid of new work and so afraid of giving writers a chance at the moment in this country. And I think it's happening in the UK as well. Majority of shows now are revivals and kind of canonical works. I think we're missing something. And I think, we wonder where the audiences are. They're not coming because we're not actively engaging with their lives as they're living it. Instead, we're just constantly seeking to find ourselves in Shakespeare. And I think I love a good Shakespeare. I would lap up Druid Shakespeare if it came back on tour. I'd be the first one in the front row. But we want more than that. And I really think audiences want more than that and they're not getting it.
And you mentioned earlier that people were surprised that you got funding. Do you feel like that just seems to be why are people so afraid of new writing and young playwrights?
Well, somebody said to me when I was like 23, oh, there hasn't been a great playwright coming out of Ireland since the 90s, or there hasn't been a great wave of playwriting since the 90s. And why hasn't there been? And I was thinking, well, because the industry collapsed all around you and nobody tried to do anything about it. I mean, people in Irish theatre specifically talk about like, oh, the heyday of the early 2000s when everyone was able to make work and you were able to live on the dole and go and have your pint after rehearsals and still survive and make this great work. That all collapsed through all those different reasons that we know about: the cost of living, rising inflation, the housing crisis, all these different reasons that have made Dublin unlivable. So playwrights now are not getting the chance to practice their craft. And if you only do, I know some playwrights who have in the last 5 years have done one play in 5 years. And if you have to wait every time for a gatekeeper to let you make a play in a city that you can barely live in, that you're working 3 jobs to try and support your writing career anyway, and you're only getting a play on every 5 years, you're not going to learn in that way. So I think we've had this great collapse in the ability of writers to survive, and also the ability of major houses to be of any interest to support in that. And then also we all know that the Arts Council funding has stagnated in the last 20 years, and there hasn't been an increase in funding since 2008, and all those other reasons as well. But I do think venues and production companies in Ireland stopped being interested in cultivating the careers of writers around about 2005. And everyone's been really surprised. There's maybe one or two exceptions to those rules of people who've been able to survive on it. Otherwise, you haven't been. And if I can make another wider point, which maybe is just me totally pontificating uselessly, you also have this company model, and the companies are run by people who've been working together for 30, 40 years now. So it's only natural that the people that they want to commission, the people they want to work with, is their peers and their compatriots. But what happens is when all those companies are 30 and 40 years old, or 20 years old, and they're the ones receiving the major funding, they're only working with their peers. So everyone else beneath them, I think, is getting crushed or is getting held down and isn't able to achieve. So the infrastructure for Irish theatrical writing at the minute, I think, is in a desperate state, where you have people just working on the fringes for 20 years in hopes that one day maybe they might be lucky enough to get a show on the Peacock and the Abbey, and then they might be able to, have enough oxygen to survive. But it feels like everyone is clinging on at the edge of their fingernails on the cliff at the minute, and I don't know where the solution is.
Gosh, that's a lot to unpack there, isn't there? Really, when you look at it that way.
Sorry.
No, why would you be sorry? No, I think that's it's a really interesting thing to talk about the podcast. I think sometimes when we talk about theatre, we talk about all these amazing good things, and it's great, and there's so many opportunities. And then I was actually just talking to an actor there, like 3 hours ago, who has been working on a number of shows, is very prominent on social media, and has been really struggling with, there's not enough opportunities there, and he finds himself in a very niche category. But I think sometimes we get very, in distracted, or kind of we fall for these like flashy productions that maybe we're missing a lot from the actual grassroots groups as well.
Yeah, and I mean, if we can't solve that problem, if we can't find a way to nurture and support artists, there's some green shoots in the horizon when you consider the basic income for the arts, which is coming in Ireland at the end of the year. But I mean, that's 2,000 people are going to get that out of maybe 14, 15,000 eligible artists. That's 1 in 7. It's crazy. It's crazy that's the limit on it. We're going to have a 2-tier system very soon by the end of this year, where some artists are able to survive better than others because they were lucky enough in a lottery system to get picked. That's the world we're going to live in now. And I really hope I'm one of those artists that gets picked in the lottery. That would change my life. But it's interesting to note that we're now going to end up in that system. And sorry.
No, I'm just wondering about then, is there going to be tension there as well between artists after that as well? Like, who's getting the funding, who's not, and like why they're getting the funding over someone else?
I think it only follows that there would be, and I think we would all like to think that we're better than that we're not going to feel jealous and we're not going to feel annoyed. But if the purpose of the basic income of the arts in Ireland is to take artists out of poverty, it makes no sense to me how 2,000 out of 15,000 are going to be taken out of poverty for 3 years and then sent back into it after 3 years because they get taken off it. I know it's a first step, hopefully on a way to a permanent basis. But of course, if you're working in a rehearsal room with somebody else who's able to afford dental care because they were lucky enough to pass the lottery system and you can't, I think over lunch that's going to, you're going to feel a little bit awkward when you're eating your chicken fillet roll.
It might come up. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Another thing I was thinking about sorry, Richard, with regards to funding is, and I think this is really worthwhile to put out there, I've been really lucky with regards to funding in the last couple of years. I think my work has been funded to maybe about, or to the tune of over €250,000 in the last 2 or 3 years to make work. And out of that 250,000, my take home pay as an artist across 2 or 3 years from that funding is less than €20,000. So I think that's the thing that we miss sometimes in theatre, is that like you can be doing really well on the funding wheel, but like theatre has to pay on average 12 people per production have to get a living wage out of that funding. So like I was really lucky and have been really lucky, and please God will continue to be lucky with regards to funding to make the work. But that funding is spread a lot, and it's spread throughout many different people, and it has to go very, very far. So people say to me sometimes, God, you're doing incredibly, and I'm really privileged to be able to have people say that. But the financial reality of that is really, really very different to the actual amount that you're getting to work with or the amount that you're getting to produce and make, I think.
Sure. And I think that's a part that maybe we don't really get to hear as well about is, you get funding, but then where does that funding actually go to, and how much is it do you actually get to use?
Yeah,
on
and also you're really, really lucky to get the funding, you know, like it's incredible, you know, to make Boyfriends on a budget of €80,000 was crazy for us to go. Like our show before that had been made on 5,000, you know, scrambled from loads of different sources. So it has been incredible to then get to tour Ireland on a €125,000 budget. It's absolutely insane and it's wonderful, and I'm so grateful. But I think it's worthwhile standing up and saying, even with that, the system does not work and we need to think about how to make a better system. I am hopeful that there's a lot of people thinking about that now. There's a lot of different people in Ireland coming together to try and work that out. But I think it's worthwhile to say it as well. Alongside all the wonderful stuff, it's also, it's tough out there. I was going to say shitty, but I don't know if I'm allowed to curse on this podcast.
It's okay. Well, you've done it now, so it's in now. You've set the tone for the rest of my interviews now. Everyone can curse. It's all good.
God damn it.
Can I? You speak so eloquently about everything. I'm just really impressed, Ultan. I'm not going to keep that in. I'm going to take that out.
Oh, you're going to cut that out?
Yeah, I'm going to cut that one out.
Cut the clip.
Yeah. Can I ask then about editing? And this is the part I think that, when I teach drama theatre and film, and my students find the editing part the hardest part, when they have an idea and it's just not working. And I've been talking to them about, like, kill your darlings, like let them go. If it's not, let them go and come back to it another time.
Yeah.
If it's just, and I find that people find it really difficult to, when they spend so much time building this beautiful piece of writing and it's just not working, that they become really downtrodden about their piece. Have you ever had an experience of that before?
I think when I think about editing, it's interesting, Richard. I think with the context of, I started to write when I first went to college, and when I first started writing, I was like, people doing 10 drafts, that's ridiculous. I shout these things out in one draft and it's amazing. And then it was only through practice, actual getting to put plays on stage in college, that I was able to go, I could have done more work there. I could have found a bit more and made that a bit better. So I was only able to learn to cope with and enjoy the drafting and editing process through practice and through getting to put plays on stages. And I sometimes fear for writers who are, writing their first play and then hoping that somebody's going to put that play on instead of having the chance to actually go and do it and practice it and see it in front of an audience, because that's the only way I've learned anything about the writing process. But I do think the Kill Your Darlings thing is interesting. I have never started a play that I haven't finished, Richard. And I try to train myself in that way, that I was like, even if I'm like, if I have a problem with this, I will solve the problem. And maybe at the end of it, you go, why did I spend 3 weeks writing this? Because nobody's ever going to put it on. But I was always like, I have to train my brain to be able to get there. So somebody asked me recently in a workshop I gave, like, how do you deal with writer's block? And I was like, I don't believe in that. Just get over it. But I do think it was a way I had to train myself to work, to be like, I'm not going to let myself get stuck. I will always try and find a way to get that first draft done, because I think the first draft is your neural pathway, or you've built the foundations of the road in your mind, and it only gets better. So I always think, like, struggle through that first draft, just get it on the page, and you have the years of your life left to continually make it better and grow it and develop it. But yeah, I don't believe in writer's block, and I think you should just write that goddamn play.
Write the goddamn play.
Yeah.
I love that. What about taking a play that you've written and transforming it into another form? So let's talk about Piglet.
Yes, please.
So Piglet is being restaged in an Irish translation. Why did Lemon Soap decide to do that?
Well, Hitchkin Heardon, who's my colleague in Lemon Soap, is a Gaeilgeoir, is a fluent speaker, and always felt that we should be thinking about our work in a dual language context. That, the work can exist in more than just English, and that there is a great hunger and appetite out there for Irish language work that is more than just, Playboy the Western World, but in Irish, and that we should be thinking about catering to that audience. And HK always felt that Piglet was, well, it's very manageable in that it's a two-hander, but also it's about a crazy lesbian in a chip shop in Offaly who kind of has lost her mind a bit, and her two old ex-best friends walk into the chip shop one day, and she decides to try and, do very strange things to them. And it was a play that was bonkers when we did it originally, but but women really went gaga for it. People would be stopping you afterwards being like, that's the female experience. And I was like, that's really worrying, because the play goes to some really dark and difficult places about body and about aesthetic and about body as the currency. And I mean, the opening line is she has a breakdown in her gender studies class and she just takes her top off and shows everyone her breasts, and that's the opening line, and it just goes from there. So it's a bonkers piece of work. But HK was always like, I think the Irish girlies would eat this up. I think if we translated this into Irish, it could really work. So last year HK translated it into Mucking, which is piglet in Irish, and then we managed to get some funding, a small pot of funding, to make it in Project Art Centre, and it'll be on at the end of this month, which is February. So it's been a really fascinating process. It was really interesting to sit in the read through recently, Richard. I don't have much Gaeilge at all, so I was reading along the English language translation, but I hadn't looked at the play in 3 years. So it was really fascinating to hear it in a new language, and also to have people discussing it who had seen the production before and are now working on the new Irish language version. That was really interesting, about, the echoes of that original production that we did 3 years ago are still echoing through into this new version of it that's in a new language and stuff. So it was a really exciting process. I can't wait to go and see it. I'm not going to see any of the rehearsals and stuff. I'm just going to be going in totally blind, and I can't wait.
I can't wait to see it as well. And I think we're very much stuck in with Irish language being, even in schools, we're teaching. Schooling has done a really good job, and teachers, especially Irish teachers, are doing a really good job at the moment of trying to improve the Irish language and the way that we're teaching it for young people, to try and get them more engaged. And we're seeing that with Gail Vratach has been this big push now in schools to improve the or modernise the Irish language, and we're kind of seeing that now across the board. But we are still in Irish theatre getting a lot of on-trials and all these kind of plays people don't really relate to anymore. So finding a piece that it's going to be Wicked is going to be really interesting to actually get to see it on stage as well.
Yeah, I can't wait. The play is it is insane, the places the play goes to. The second act of the play is she's rolling around the floor and imagining her mother as Jennifer Coolidge, and kind of speaking to her. Her mother is torturing her, but she's Jennifer Coolidge. And that's going to be in Irish, which I'm really excited for, about what that's going to be like. So yeah, the play is mad, but I think it's about trying to capture an audience who, as you say, are a bit sick of Antrim, or a bit sick of, school Irish, if that makes sense, curriculum Irish.
Curriculum Irish, yeah.
It's about giving them that excitement. I was talking to the producer Lisa, who we work with in Lemon Soap, yesterday, and she was telling me that they were in Street 66, and a group of people came in from the gay Gaelic team in Dublin, who are all Gaeilgeoirs, and bumped into one of them and said, "Oh my God, you're the Mucking team. We're all coming to see that at the end of the month." And you're that's the audience we want to be engaging with and speaking to, and giving them this unique experience as Gaelic guy.
100%. Yeah. Now, you did mention before we started there was a line in the play that you're not very proud of. Do you want to share what that line is?
Yeah. So, the opening of Piglet basically is, she tells you that she wasn't having a breakdown, but she just stood up one day in her gender studies class and showed everyone her breasts. She doesn't use the word breasts, but I'm not going to lower the tone of your
okay,
podcast.
Thank you.
And she kind of rambles a bit about she was imagining in her head different things that were happening in that moment as she stood up and just took her top off. And one of them was this terrible line, Richard, about she imagined Michael D. Higgins smoking a hookah pipe or something, and that was what was in her head. And I always cringed at it when we did the original production in 2023, but the thing I find, if I can tie this back to a wider point about process, is that sometimes the characters say cringy things, and I have to say to myself as the writer, trust that the audience is going to know that that's not you thinking that's a cool thing to say, that it's the character. But I just listened to it in Irish about, Michael D. Higgins smoking a pipa or whatever. I was like, no, take that out. I was like, that line has to go. That's the one cut I'm making. Yeah. He's not even relevant anymore, Catherine Connolly saying now. But,
yeah.
It was, it's that thing of the characters can be cringe, and I think let them be cringe, but sometimes you have to go can I really live with people thinking that I think this is cool? I'm also judging her for saying this line, but yeah, it's gone now.
I think it's a fair choice to make, I think.
Thank you so much.
What about 24-hour theatre in Abbey? What was that like?
Yeah, that was a crazy experience, Richard. I did it twice. So I've done it as a writer and I've done it as an actor. And I thought as a writer, it was so easy because basically you go in on the 7 o'clock on the Saturday, you meet 40 actors, they all have to pitch themselves, and you're paired up with a director, and you basically at 11 o'clock that night go into a room, you pick your 5 actors, and you have to write a play by 6 o'clock that morning for them, a 15-minute play. And I loved it. I thought it was the best thing in the world. And interestingly, I wrote a soap opera for it. I wrote an episode of a fictional Irish soap opera called Bridgewater, and we did that in 2024. And it went down so well in the Abbey Auditorium that I was like, I think this should be a full-length play, which we just did a work in progress showing of that last week of a kind of 10-person Bridgewater. So I had a whale of a time writing it. But going back in as an actor was... yeah, it was terrifying because you don't have any control. So you go in and you pitch yourself at 7 o'clock on the Saturday, you leave, you go home, and at 8 o'clock in the morning you turn up in the Abbey Theatre and you're handed a script and you're told what your team is, and you have to run to your rehearsal space, sit down, read the play for the first time, and by 7:30 that night you're going to be on in the Abbey stage doing that play. But I had such a great time, Richard. I loved it. Like, it was so exciting. And I thought this when I wrote on it as well. But like, you just have to embrace your instinct, and you have to go like, I know what I'm doing. And it's like the rehearsal process on crack, where it's totally distilled, and you're doing in 6 hours what you usually do in 6 weeks. But it was absolute bliss, like just trying things out and seeing what happens and being ridiculous and embracing this crazy physicality for a character, and then getting to do it in front of 600 people that night in the Abbey stage. I will say, I was sitting in the wings, like honestly about to like explode. And I'm not going to go into any more detail about that, but like I honestly wanted to die. But then you just have to walk on and like embrace it. And I was dressed as a pirate, and I improvised this line in it that I was actually a pirate dressed as Liza Minnelli, which did get a laugh. I'm glad,
yeah.
but that one was for the gays in the crowd. So it was a really fascinating experience, just to trust that you actually have a craft, and to trust that, I will not fall flat on my face. But also as an actor, it was so freeing because you are not going to get a chance to be as hammy ever again. So you're just able to embrace the ham and embrace the ridiculousness and just see if you can make people laugh. I loved it.
I had an awful experience doing 24-hour theatre. Now, I didn't do it in the Abbey. I did it in the Theatre Festival in Galway when I first moved down. Now, Ultan, I thought I was like this, like big fish in a small pond. Like I am I am an actor, and I did stage school stuff beforehand. So when I got to college in Galway, I got nothing. I got like 0 parts whenever, like for the first 3 years at Dramsoc, got nothing. Ended up going into directing instead. And then when I signed up in my first year to do that, they put like a notice into our college to be like, anyone who wants to do 24-hour theatre. I was like, yeah, I could do this. It was in the Micklally Theatre, and we were given our script that morning, and our writer stood on glass on the way home. So he was actually an A&E writing the play. So we were kind of delayed by a little bit of time. And I remember getting on stage in the Micklally, and I could not remember a single line. Like nothing. Like there was no there was no saving me. There was no, like, even when they were prompting me, I couldn't find a line. So I think I'm going to leave 24-hour theatre to the professionals and let you guys do that, and I can just watch in the auditorium from now on. I've learned my lesson.
I wake up sometimes with nightmares, like sweating about the idea of being on stage and not knowing what the next line is. So like the fact that you've actually lived that must have been terrifying, Richard.
It was rough. Have you ever had a like a mishap on stage?
I mean, like 2 weeks ago in the 24-hour plays, at the opening of our play, this group of us have just come back from an afters, and one of them decides she's going to whip out a Ouija board to speak to her father, who's not dead, but she's just not communicating at the minute. So she says that this Ouija board is going to maybe get in touch with them. And the set in the Abbey at the time had lots of peat on it, like lots of dirt, and the Ouija board was buried in the dirt. The actress ran over to try and find the Ouija board and couldn't find it in the dirt, and we couldn't continue the scene if she didn't have the Ouija board. So there was 4 of us in the scene. The other 2 actors run in and start trying to search in the dirt, and nobody's finding it. And I was standing back dressed as a pirate Liza Minnelli, trying to look sexy, being like, I'm not going to look in the dirt, because my line is when she whips out the Ouija board, not the fucking Ouija board. But then nobody could find it, so I ran forward and just dug my hand in the dirt and ran across the length of the stage, being like, I will hit something at some point and that'll be the Ouija board. So eventually I found the Ouija board and got a big reveal of the Ouija board. But then my first line after that was, oh, not the fucking Ouija board. So that was embarrassing. But I mean, you have mishaps all the time, Richard. Like I think during Boyfriends, I mean, myself or Emmanuel would dry all the time, and you were just trying to get going. And Boyfriends had a remote controlled pug dog made of socks called Marshmallow, who people loved the dog. People didn't love me, but they loved the dog. And Emmanuel and I are like kissing and simulating sex on the couch, and the dog is meant to come out of his kennel and drive over to the stage and like bark. And then there's a whole comedy scene about, oh my God, I'm not going to do this while the dog is there. But one night, myself and Emmanuel are like making out on the couch, and the dog's taking a while to get there. And Emmanuel whispers in my ear mid-kiss, the dog is stuck. The dog is stuck in the kennel. So I had to jump off the bed in my underwear and run over and take the dog out of the kennel and be like, oh, sorry, I heard him whining. Like, oh God, the poor fella was whining in the kennel. And the dog, the dog kept falling over. And on the first night of the show in Project, the dog fell over, and I improvised a line about, oh God, that's his arthritis. And then, of course, the audience went feral for that line, and it was included in the Irish Times review about like Pringle's funny line about the dog having arthritis. And I was like, I didn't even write that one. It just came out
from my brain. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Okay, can I do a quick question that's going to be completely different to what we're talking about? So you're going to be 60 years old, okay, and a Lifetime movie is being made about you. Who are you getting to play your younger self?
As in out of the current crop of people that are alive right now?
Yeah, I think so. That doesn't really work hypothetically, but it's fine.
Well, can I overshare, and you might have to cut this later on?
Okay.
One time I was in Galway and I was getting with this really beautiful guy, and we were lying in bed, and he looked at me and he said, do you know you look vaguely like the Cat in the Hat? And I think about that all the time, Richard.
No.
So I'm like, and I was like Michael Myers?
Yeah, I was going to ask, like, which version of Cat in the Hat?
He was like, the live action Cat in the Hat. Apparently I look vaguely like Michael Myers. So maybe Michael Myers would play the older version of me. Who'd play the younger version? I don't know. Who do you think? I'm putting it back on you now, Richard, as the host.
We'll go with Timothée Chalamet, will we?
Timothée Chalamet.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. We have the same kind of hair.
That's true. Yeah.
I don't think Timothée Chalamet's up to much.
No. Maybe Marion O'Dwyer might be free to do it as well, if you wanted.
Marion O'Dwyer. Yeah, please. Marion in a little boy wig, like a little like short boy wig.
Yeah. I think she'd be fantastic. Yeah, absolutely.
Wait, I must tell her that. I'll text her that after we're done.
You can tell her that this has become Marion O'Dwyer's podcast, as in this is a fan club now.
You'll have to interview her at some point.
I would love to. So Marion O'Dwyer, if you're listening, just contact me. Okay.
Season 3?
Season 3. What I do want to, though, I'm going to finish up here because I think that has been a fantastic look into the process behind a writer and the Irish scene and funding and all these different areas. What is, looking back on what you've done so far, because you're still so young, like, what has been your proudest moment?
You're doing me dirty saying I'm still so young when people watching this will be like, look at those wrinkles.
No, that's not true.
I actually have a filter on, the smoothing filter. No, I don't. I don't believe in that sort of body modification. My proudest moment, I think it's obvious, but I think Boyfriends was the one for me. Like, I mean, that experience, it was so difficult. It was such a challenge as an actor. It was so easy to write it and then to realize that you had to act it. But just, I mean, there was just sometimes when an audience we did it in the McLally Theatre in Galway for 2 nights, and the audience was just so engaged, and you could hear a pin drop at points, and they were cackling 1 minute, and then like you could hear people sobbing the next. And I was thinking like, oh, this feels really validating. I don't think this is the best piece I will ever make at all, but just to realize that, you know, you have a craft and you have a process and an ability to give a good time to an audience was a really exciting moment, and it made me really excited for the next 60 years.
What a great way to wrap it up. Ultan, thank you so much for joining the podcast today. Where can people find you, and where can people find Lemon Soap as well?
Yes, so Lemon Soap Productions on Instagram. It's just Lemon Soap Productions. I'm on Ultan Pringle. I think I'm on Ultan Pringle on Instagram. Yes, and then there's a Lemon Soap website as well. You can keep in touch with all our future works as well there.
Ultan, did I call Lemon Soap a Lemon Soap box for like half this interview?
I think you only said it once, but it did sound like...
No.
I kind of fucked with it, Richard, because I was like, it sounded like you were saying like, what's the Lemon Soap box? when you asked the question. So I was always putting a box around it. Yeah.
We'll just go with that. Okay. Ultan,
Cut
thank
this
you
part,
so
cut this
much.
part. Thank you very much, Richard. It was a real
chat
pleasure.
soon. You've been listening to Places Please, Richard's Theatre Podcast, hosted by me, Richard Brown. Audio engineering and editing by Connor Gill. Stay tuned for a sneak peek of our next episode.
And the why for me is about one human being connecting with another. And I knew that that could not happen online. And so we hired a camper van. And we took a dry land version of our pool show round individual families' gardens and driveways for 4 weeks. And yeah, so I think, and that anchors me, is to go, well, why do I do this? And I go, it's about human connection.